If you look at a weather map of the United States right now, it is it's genuinely wild to realize the country is essentially split cleanly in half.
Yeah, it really is a staggering contrast.
Right, because on the eastern side, you have entire metropolitan areas literally drowning under extreme rainfall. And then on the western side, the landscape is just, well, it's absolutely baking under historic heat and catching fire.
Exactly. And when you dig into the ground level data, it is not hyperbole. You are looking at two extreme, highly destructive sides of the exact same atmospheric coin.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We're unpacking a single, incredibly detailed source today, which is the August 3, 2026 Weather Edition report from the Daily Tech Reader.
Mhm.
And the mission for this deep dive is to help you understand what actually happens when a continent-sized weather system gets stuck.
Right, because it really did get stuck.
Yeah, so we're looking at flooded subways in New York, a massive heat dome in the Southwest, and record-shattering wildfires in the Pacific Northwest.
Okay, let's unpack this because the sheer scale of the disruption is just hard to wrap your head around.
It is, it's huge.
Yeah.
But to really understand what's happening, you have to realize this isn't just like a random list of localized weather events.
Right.
You can't look at a flooded street in New Jersey and a wildfire in Oregon as separate phenomena. We are looking at a massive, interconnected atmospheric machine.
So they're directly linked.
Exactly. A stalled weather front on one side of the country is directly, mechanically related to the high-pressure ridge locking in the extreme heat on the other.
Wow. Well, let's start with that stalled front on the East Coast, because right now, that boundary is essentially wringing out a tropical air mass like a giant soaking wet sponge.
Yeah, directly over some of the most densely populated real estate in the country.
Right. By Monday evening, the New York City metro area was turned into an absolute flash flood disaster zone. And the numbers coming out of that storm system are truly something else. I mean, Central Park recorded 2.64 inches of rain.
Which is a lot.
It's a massive amount.
Okay.
That is the city's heaviest single-day total in over 2 years.
Right. But it wasn't just, a slow, steady drizzle over 24 hours.
No, not at all.
In parts of Manhattan, more than 2 inches fell in a single hour.
Which is just devastating for urban infrastructure.
Yeah, and the videos that spread across social media were terrifying. I mean, if you've ever stood on a New York subway platform, you know they can get damp. But you had floodwaters literally cascading down the station stairs like whitewater rapids.
Yeah, surging right onto the platforms.
Exactly. The MTA had to suspend service on multiple lines, and then JFK, LaGuardia, and Newark, all of them faced ground stop orders during the evening.
And, when you halt traffic at 3 of the biggest airport hubs in the world simultaneously,
It's chaos.
it causes a massive ripple effect. We're talking flight cancellations all the way out to Denver and Los Angeles.
Right. And the impact extended well beyond the 5 boroughs of New York, too.
New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy had to declare a state of emergency.
Waist-high floodwaters in parts of Westchester County and northeastern New Jersey.
And tragically, the report notes 2 deaths in Plainfield, New Jersey, after a vehicle was swept away in the floodwaters.
Yeah, and the detail in the report that really stopped me in my tracks, those 2 deaths, made it Plainfield's 4th weather-related fatality in less than 5 weeks.
Wow. It just highlights a grim reality about how relentless and concentrated this specific weather pattern has been for that exact region.
And the threat wasn't isolated just to the New York metro. I mean, the Weather Prediction Center placed a slight risk for excessive rainfall across this massive mid-Atlantic stretch.
Right, so Baltimore, Washington, Richmond, Philadelphia, all seeing heavy rain.
Yeah, with that stalled front stretching the flood threat all the way down into northern Florida.
Which is interesting because speaking of Florida, the report notes they actually seem to be running their standard August script.
Right, like low 90s, heat index of 105 degrees, Boca Raton hitting a real feel of 106.
And that totally predictable 70% chance of afternoon storms.
Yeah.
But the contrast there is really important. Florida experiences what we call convective summer storms almost daily this time of year.
Yeah, the afternoon pop-ups.
Exactly. The extreme heat of the day warms the ground. That warm air rises rapidly into the atmosphere, cools, condenses, dumps an enormous amount of rain in 20 minutes, and then clears out.
So it's fast.
Very fast. And Florida's entire municipal infrastructure, like the sloping of the roads, the massive retention ponds, it's all explicitly built to handle that daily convective cycle.
Unlike the Northeast.
Right. New York and New Jersey are a completely different story.
Which brings me to a big question. Because if you think of New York City's concrete landscape like a giant bathtub, You know that if a massive storm is coming, you need to make sure the drain is unclogged.
Right.
And the report notes that New York City Emergency Management did exactly that. I mean, they pre-positioned task forces, they went out and cleared catch basins in flood-prone areas days ahead of time.
They did.
So if they pre-positioned emergency crews and fully cleared the drains, why did the infrastructure still fail so catastrophically across all 5 boroughs?
Well, what's fascinating here is the sheer physical limitation of municipal drainage when it goes up against atmospheric capacity.
Okay.
You have to remember 2 key factors. First, this region was already deeply saturated from repeated heavy flooding events over the previous week.
Right, from all those earlier storms.
Exactly. So the soil in the parks and surrounding suburbs was like a sponge that just couldn't take another drop, which means all that water instantly becomes surface runoff.
So it all just rushes onto the concrete.
Exactly. And second, modern urban infrastructure, those storm drains, the subterranean pipes, the catch basins, they are engineered based on historical rainfall averages.
Okay, meaning they have a size limit.
Right. They are physically pipe-sized to handle a specific volume of water over a specific amount of time. They are not built to ingest a rainfall rate of 1 to 2 inches per hour.
Wow.
When you dump that sheer weight and volume of water onto concrete in a 60-minute window, it just doesn't matter how clean or debris-free the storm drain is.
The pipes are just too narrow.
Exactly. The water physically cannot move through the diameter of those pipes fast enough. The system isn't clogged, it's instantly mathematically overwhelmed.
Man, it's a sobering reminder that our supposedly resilient modern urban infrastructure can just be brought to its knees in an hour by slow-moving tropical moisture.
It really is.
But let's follow that exact same stalled front as it grinds westward into the Midwest, because this is where the dynamic really shifts.
Yeah, it becomes a totally different type of hazard.
Right, you have this cool, wet air from the front slamming directly into a massive wall of heat sitting over the central U.S. Like, think of the cold front, like a giant atmospheric snowplow driving at high speed into a wall of thick, humid air.
That is the perfect way to visualize it. That collision zone creates an incredibly volatile environment.
Because of that snowplow effect.
Exactly. And because of that, the Storm Prediction Center issued a level 2 out of 5, which is a slight risk for a corridor stretching from southeastern Wisconsin through southern Michigan and right down into the Ohio and Tennessee valleys.
And the hazards they were tracking are intense. I mean, damaging wind gusts of 58 miles per hour or greater, large hail, and even the threat of isolated tornadoes stretching from Michigan down to West Virginia.
And potentially from eastern Ohio all the way over to Buffalo, New York.
Yeah. We're already seeing major travel slowdowns on the interstates in Ohio just from the heavy morning rain hitting those saturated soils.
And just to show how localized these fronts can be, it's a stark contrast to the southeast Gulf Coast right now.
Oh, right. Places like Baton Rouge, Mobile, and New Orleans.
Yeah, they're actually getting a brief post-frontal dryout.
Because the front passed them.
Exactly. So they are seeing lower humidity, sunshine, and feeling quite comfortable for a Louisiana summer, at least until the Gulf moisture inevitably returns by midweek.
But I have to push back here on the severity of this Midwest collision zone. Because, you're talking about summer thunderstorms.
Sure.
We get intense summer thunderstorms in the Midwest every single July and August. Why are forecasters treating this specific squall line like a unique anomaly capable of throwing isolated tornadoes all the way into New York State? Like, why isn't this just standard summer weather?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
it all comes back to the massive heat dome locking down the West.
Okay.
AccuWeather meteorologists noted that these storms aren't just popping up randomly. They are forming and tracking specifically along the very northern edge of a persistent heat dome sitting over the central U.S.
So the heat dome is acting as the instigator here.
Exactly. That heat dome acts like a physical barrier, forcing the jet stream up and over it, but it also provides explosive fuel.
The hot air.
Right. The hot, incredibly humid conditions trapped beneath that dome feed directly into the cooler air riding over the top of it.
And when that cold air wedges under the hot air, going back to your snowplow analogy, it forces the hot air to rise violently.
Yes, and that creates tremendous wind shear, which is when winds are blowing at different speeds in different directions at varying altitudes.
And that wind shear is what essentially tumbles the air and creates the spin required for tornadoes.
Precisely. So these aren't just your standard pop-up afternoon showers. They are highly organized, severe weather systems running along a supercharged atmospheric highway powered by the heat dome itself.
Wow. Which means To really understand the origin of these storms, we have to step across that boundary line and dive directly into the fuel source.
The heat dome.
Right. The heat dome locking down the western half of the country. And the numbers here aren't just hot, they are actively hostile.
Hostile is the right word. In Texas, the triple digits have firmly returned.
Yeah, Dallas-Fort Worth was forecast to hit 101 degrees with a heat index near 107.
And a remarkably strong ridge of high pressure is going to keep that region pinned at 100 to 102 degrees all week, with absolute zero chance of rain.
But the desert Southwest is where the situation becomes truly dangerous. CNN reported that this heat dome is keeping roughly 45 million people under some form of heat alert.
That's a massive portion of the population.
It is. Las Vegas hit 115 degrees on Saturday. That was the hottest day of 2026 so far.
And it hit 114 on Sunday and was sitting at 113 on Monday.
Yeah, and the Weather Channel pointed out that Vegas is rapidly approaching its July 2024 record of 11 consecutive days at or above 110 degrees.
And we are seeing similar extremes pushing into California. Death Valley was forecast to hit a high of 123 degrees.
With a nighttime low of only 96.
Right. And the interior valleys, stretching all the way from Redding down south to Bakersfield, were locked in at 103 to 108 degrees.
Meanwhile, if you look at the California coast, they were getting some modest relief, sitting in the mid-80s. But that's due to the marine layer, right?
Exactly, that trapped layer of cool, dense ocean air sitting right on the coastline.
Which honestly kind of masks the extreme danger just a few miles inland. And then, bizarrely, you have monsoon moisture moving in, causing dangerous flash flooding at high altitudes.
Is that like along the Mogollon Rim in the New Mexico mountains?
Right, while the valley floors directly below them are just baking into dust.
It's an environment of total extremes.
It really is. But there is a specific phrase in the report regarding Las Vegas that I want to zero in on. The report mentioned a no physiological recovery window, pointing out that overnight lows were holding near 89 degrees.
Yes, that is a critical detail.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because if you live in Las Vegas or Phoenix, you are tough. You are deeply accustomed to extreme heat. So what makes this specific string of days fundamentally more dangerous to the human body than a standard scorching desert summer?
It all comes down to the biology of thermal regulation.
Okay.
When you step outside and you are exposed to 110-plus degree heat during the day, your heart has to work overtime.
Just to keep you cool.
Right. It pumps massive amounts of blood away from your internal organs and pushes it out to your skin so you can sweat and radiate that heat away.
So your heart is just racing.
It is an immense cardiovascular strain just to keep your core temperature stable. Now, normally, when the sun goes down and temperatures drop into the 70s, your body finally gets a break.
You're ready, you can cool off.
Your core temperature lowers naturally, your heart rate settles, and your internal organs recover from the stress of the day.
But when the temperature only drops to 89 degrees at midnight.
At 89 degrees, that biological reset never happens.
Oh, wow.
Your body continues to sweat, your heart continues to race to shed heat, even while you are lying in bed sleeping.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. Imagine running a mild marathon for 24 hours straight without stopping. Day after day, that compounding physiological strain begins to cause systemic organ failure, even in perfectly healthy individuals.
Man.
That is exactly why Clark County is keeping their cooling stations at community centers and libraries open continuously, around the clock.
Because you need that AC.
Exactly. Without access to air conditioning, the human body simply cannot survive that prolonged lack of recovery.
That is terrifying to think about, and we naturally move from that relentless, crushing heat dome to its ultimate consequence.
Yeah.
Because when you bake a landscape for weeks on end and you drop the humidity down to the single digits, the entire environment turns into a tinderbox.
Which brings us to the tragedy unfolding in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, the statistics coming out of Oregon right now are historic in the worst possible way.
They really are. As of August 2, Oregon's 2026 wildfire season has already shattered the all-time state modern record.
The numbers are staggering. 1.978 million acres burned. That surpasses the previous devastating record set just 2 years ago in 2024.
And they still have nearly 2 months of peak fire season left to go.
It's unbelievable. And the primary ignition source hasn't even been human error.
No, it's been a series of rapidly escalating dry lightning storms striking that baked landscape.
Right now, there are 60 large fires actively burning across the state.
And to give you a sense of the scale emergency crews are dealing with, the shingle fire in Wheeler County is at over 67,000 acres, and is only 16% contained.
Wow.
And the Roe Creek complex has burned over 313,000 acres and is barely over half contained.
And neighboring states are feeling the exact same threat. I mean, Wyoming is currently facing extreme fire danger.
Right. Casper was sitting at 102 degrees with single-digit humidity.
And heavy, gusty winds, triggering widespread red flag warnings. But the true impact of these fires isn't just about the flames on the ground, it's the smoke.
Yeah, the smoke is a massive issue.
The report details how the smoke plume from Oregon is pouring south, blanketing Northern California and the Sierra Nevada foothills.
Pushing the air quality index deep into the unhealthy to very unhealthy ranges.
And that smoke is catching the upper-level winds and reaching all the way into Texas. So what does this all mean for the people living under it?
It's a really difficult situation.
You have this unwanted continental blanket of toxic smoke stretching across the country. How on earth do residents protect themselves when public health officials tell them to stay inside and close their windows because of the toxic air? But they might not have the air conditioning needed to survive the extreme indoor heat.
This raises an important question about how our infrastructure and public health systems handle compounding disasters.
Right.
When you have extreme heat and extreme smoke occurring simultaneously, the standard public health advice actually contradicts itself.
Wait, how so?
Well, the advice for heat is to open your windows at night to cool the house down, but the advice for smoke is to seal your house up tightly so you can breathe.
Oh, man, so you have to choose.
Exactly. When people are forced to choose between heat stroke and smoke inhalation, it places an almost unimaginable strain on local emergency resources.
I can imagine.
Cooling centers reach capacity instantly because people can't safely stay in their own homes, and the power grids are pushed to the absolute brink as everyone with AC runs it on maximum concurrently.
And those emergency resources are already incredibly stretched, which brings up the immense complexities of federal aid distribution mentioned in the report.
Yes.
The Daily Tech Reader notes that the Trump administration denied federal firefighting assistance grants for two of the most significant Oregon fires, while approving other grants that were requested by Governor Kotek.
Right.
And Oregon's congressional delegation has publicly called that denial inadequate, given the historic scope of this specific crisis.
And that highlights the immense tension between state-level emergencies and federal disaster response frameworks.
It's incredibly complicated.
When a state is battling 60 large fires simultaneously and breaking all-time acreage records, the sheer logistical and financial burn rate is astronomical.
Right, they need the money.
Federal assistance grants aren't just paperwork. They are the mechanism that pays for the heavy air tankers, the contracted bulldozer crews, and the out-of-state firefighters rushing in to help.
So they are essential.
It's exactly. The distribution of that federal aid and the criteria used to approve or deny those specific grants becomes a critical real-world choke point in how effectively a state can mobilize resources to protect its communities on the actual fire line.
It's a massive, high-stakes logistical puzzle, and it's being played out while the board is literally on fire.
That's a good way to put it.
Let's take a step back and look at the journey we just took through this single day's weather report. We started on the East Coast, where millions of dollars in pre-storm preparation and perfectly clear drains couldn't stop 2.64 inches of rain from turning the New York subway system into a subterranean waterfall because the pipes just aren't wide enough. We moved to the Midwest, where the violent collision of a stalled cold front wedging under a heat dome is spinning up isolated tornadoes.
Yeah.
We looked at the desert Southwest, where 45 million people are trapped under a heat dome that offers absolutely no physiological recovery window at night, pushing the human heart to its limit. And finally, we saw the tragic fallout in the Pacific Northwest, where Oregon has shattered its modern wildfire record with months left to burn, blanketing half the country in smoke.
It really reinforces the core idea we started with. We're dealing with a single, highly energetic, deeply interconnected atmospheric machine.
It's all connected.
The intense heat baking the soil in Nevada is the exact same system providing the explosive fuel for thunderstorms in Ohio, which is tied to the stalled front flooding the streets of New Jersey. You cannot isolate these events.
And that interconnectedness brings me to a final thought I want you to ponder as we wrap up today. As we unpack this report, you might have noticed a very specific pattern in the dates.
Yeah.
The data showed two major modern climate records being challenged or broken in just a 2-year span. Oregon surpassed its all-time state fire record, which was just set in 2024, right now in 2026.
And Las Vegas is approaching its extreme heat streak record, which was also just set in 2024.
Exactly. For a long time, we talked about unprecedented historical events as things that happen once in a generation. You'd have the storm of the century or the fire of the decade.
Right.
Now, the gap between these extremes has shrunk from decades down to mere months.
And that shrinking timeline fundamentally changes how we have to think about the future of our built environment.
Exactly. So the question to leave with is this. As that baseline moves this fast, how does society even begin to redesign our cities? How do we rapidly re-engineer the diameter of the subway drains in New York, fund continuous 24-hour cooling centers in Nevada, or overhaul the power grids and emergency aid distribution frameworks nationwide to keep up with a reality that is rewriting its own record books every 24 months?
That's a huge question.
It's a daunting challenge, but it starts with understanding the sheer scale of the system we're living inside of. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, check on your neighbors when the weather gets rough, and stay safe out there.